Hello everyone, welcome back to Laura Reads. Before we continue, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Our goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. Thank you so much for your support.
Men of Reddit, what's your creepy girl story? I was at a party in college with a large group of friends. We saw a girl there that we knew from our dorm building the previous year. My roommate had a big crush on her at the time, but she had told him she wasn't interested in dating. Otherwise, she had always seemed friendly and easy to get along with. She saw me and came over to say hello, asking how I had been. We talked for a bit, and then she asked if I wanted to step outside while she had smoke. I agreed since it was hot inside and I wanted some air. We talked for a while, then went back inside. She asked me to play beer pong with her, and we ended up winning several games in a row. She was very excited whenever we scored. I was starting to feel unwell and wanted to leave, but we kept playing. Eventually, we lost a game, and before I could leave, she grabbed my arm and pulled me outside again to smoke. At that point, I really wanted to go. She was nice, but she had been very touchy, and I wasn't interested. I also didn't want my roommate, who was at the party, to misunderstand the situation since he had previously liked her. We went back inside after she smoked, and I said, "Hey, I'm not feeling well. I think I'm going to head out." She acted like she was heartbroken and said, "Here, put my number in your phone and call me so I have your number." She put me on the spot, so I reluctantly did it. I quickly grabbed my coat, told my roommate about the situation and that I was trying to avoid her, and we both left. When I got back to the apartment, I logged onto Facebook to talk with friends. This was before mobile messaging was really a thing, so it was through a browser. Shortly after, she messaged me on Facebook. She must have left the party right after I did, because she was already reaching out again. I didn't respond and closed Facebook. Then she texted me on my phone. Then I called him. I kept ignoring everything. Over the next 20 minutes, I got around 7 calls and messages from her. Eventually it stopped. A bit later, I left my room to get a snack, and my roommate, who I lived with but slept in a separate room, said, "Hey man, sorry, I told her a while ago I teach her guitar and she's coming over." I felt bad saying no. I figured you could just stay in your room. I told him about the messages and calls, and he realized that wasn't good. She had basically guilted him into letting her come over so she could see me. I hid in my room with the door locked and heard her arrive. My roommate let her in and they talked for a bit. Then she came to my door and started knocking and trying the handle, saying she just wanted to say hi. My roommate told her I was sleeping and not feeling well and suggested she hang out in the other room instead. They went back to the living room. It was quiet for a while. Then I heard her use the bathroom near my room. After she finished, she tried knocking and turning my door handle again. After a few minutes, she stopped and went back to my roommate. At this point, it was around 1 or 2 in the morning. My roommate texted me an hour or two later saying the girl asked if she could sleep on our couch because it was late, cold outside, and she had a long walk back to her place. He felt bad and said yes. He gave her a pillow and blanket and basically let her settle in. Just a couple minutes later, she was back at my door, knocking and trying the handle, saying, "Please let me in, please." I ignored her and stayed as quiet as possible. Then she started calling and texting me again, asking me to let her in because she was cold. The heating was on, so it wasn't actually an issue. After a while, she eventually stopped, and I fell asleep. When I woke up in the morning, she was gone, and I thought it was over. But after talking to my roommate, I found out she eventually stopped trying to get to me and ended up going into his room instead, and they hooked up. He felt conflicted about it afterward because he knew she'd been pursuing me earlier, but he had also had a past crush on her and went along with it. After that, I texted her and told her not to contact me again. I never heard from her after that. Met a girl at a party, left early. She repeatedly tried to contact me and get into my locked room. Then ended up sleeping with my roommate after I ignored her. Next story. I'm not a man, but I'm telling this story on behalf of my male friend. He used to date one of our mutual friends, and without his knowledge, she would take pictures of them right after they had been intimate and post them to Snapchat and Instagram. The pictures weren't revealing since they were both covered from the chest up, but another friend and I kept stumbling across them while strolling through our feeds. At first, we assumed he knew she was taking and posting the pictures, even though I always thought it was pretty weird. Eventually, we found out he had absolutely no idea she was doing it until we told him. I honestly think that's such a huge invasion of privacy and incredibly creepy. It was completely inappropriate. Next story. I was in my third year of college and had just become the president of the anime club. Most of the members had graduated the previous year, so I was determined to recruit as many new members as possible. My way of doing that was by befriending them and giving them more of a reason to show up every week. But that backfired with one woman. I'll call her Paige. Paige was a freshman, and according to others, she had been in love with me from the moment she met me. Shortly after the semester started, I broke up with my girlfriend over the summer. What people didn't know was that I had broken up with her because I had finally come out to myself as gay. Only 3 people knew at that point: my 2 best friends and my ex. Now that the club knew I was single, apparently a few girls had a thing for me, because Paige actually started a fist fight on campus after overhearing another club member say she was going to ask me out. The only reason I knew about it was because one of my best friends was in the bathroom when it happened and was the one who called campus security. But that wasn't the end of it. Whenever the club members ate lunch or dinner at the student commons, Paige made sure to sit as close to me as possible. She laughed way too hard at everything I said and touched my arm, shoulder, or body whenever she could. She even went so far as to put her hand on my inner thigh once. She probably would have gone farther if I hadn't stood up and walked away. She chased after me, wrapped her arms around me, and refused to let go until I accepted her apology. Whenever I hung out with other club members, she always found out and forced herself to come along. My best friends and I had a tradition of watching Disney movies every Saturday night to distress, and we would invite other friends sometimes. So, of course, Paige showed up there too. Throughout every movie, she kept commenting about how she was like the princess or heroine, and I was like the prince or hero. She also slowly scooted closer to me during the movie. When we watched Brave, I got up and changed seats 3 different times just to get away from her. She even showed up outside my best friend's dorm room when it was just me and 2 friends hanging out and basically forced her way inside. My best friends had known about my problems with Paige ever since the hand on the thigh incident, so they ended the hangout early just to get rid of her. Paige even started hanging around my dorm building, even though her dorm was on the other side of campus. I used to keep my door propped open because the air conditioning sucked, and my friends in the building could just stop by whenever. But after the first time she casually walked into my room, I stopped doing that and made my friends text me when they got outside instead. I also started wearing headphones whenever I was on my laptop or listening to music, because if Paige was outside and heard movement, she would stand at my door until I texted my floor advisor to get rid of her. About halfway through the year, she asked me when I was going to ask her out, and I flat out said, "Never, I'm gay." Her response was, "Oh, I can fix that." That was enough for me. By that point, I had come out to most of my friends, so I gathered them together and told them everything about Paige. They basically formed an anti-Paige defense squad and made sure that whenever we were out, at club meetings, eating lunch or dinner, or just hanging out, the seats next to me were always filled by one of them. There was even one time we were at Dairy Queen, and Paige somehow appeared next to our table out of nowhere. One friend even started throwing herself into my lap whenever Paige showed up, just to try and scare her off. Paige didn't give up until the end of, the year. During finals week, I had an 8 a.m. final one morning, so I forced myself to eat breakfast even though I normally don't. I found one friend in the dining hall, and we grabbed a table far from the entrance and out of view. Somehow, Paige still found us. She announced that her finals were already finished and that she would be moving out of her dorm that day. Then she forced me to promise that I would come see her off. Obviously, I didn't. Instead, I stayed with a friend off campus until the end of the day. I also blocked her on my phone and ignored her Facebook friend request since I no longer had any obligation to her as club president over the summer. I moved off campus for my 4th year and later found out that Paige had moved into the same dorm building I had previously lived in, so I don't think she gave up right away. One of my nosy friends is still Facebook friends with her and keeps me updated. A few months into her second year, Paige started dating another guy from the anime club and eventually married him during her third year. He was actually 7 years older than her, and we knew he used to beat his previous girlfriend. Paige even posted on Facebook in graphic detail right after she lost her virginity to him. We later found out they were expecting a child, so even though none of my friends or I liked Paige, we still hoped she and that poor kid wouldn't end up in danger or be taken advantage of. Bonus, Paige had been studying to become a teacher, but she got fired from her job as a lifeguard and swim instructor at the university pool because she couldn't handle children professionally. She also got caught shoplifting from the student store once, and her excuse was that since she was going to become a teacher, she needed to get those bad impulses out of her system now. Double bonus, the girl Paige got into a fist fight with eventually asked me out during my 4th year of college in front of the entire anime club. That ended up being the moment I formally came out to the whole club, instead of just my close friend group. Next story, I dated a girl for 8 months. At first, things were okay, but eventually, she started checking my phone every day, reading all my private messages, even conversations with family. She made me delete social media accounts and create new ones. She stopped me from seeing my brother and even my closest friends for about 6 months because she was afraid I would cheat. She would hit me if I said the wrong thing, while still making me believe it was love. After it ended, I had no friends left because she had isolated me from them, and no support from my family because she had convinced me I was the one hurting them by being with her. I also lost my college grades and my job after she falsely reported that I had hit her in a store. It's still been a really difficult aftermath for me even months later. Next story, I met her on Tinder, but I lived in a small town about an hour away from the big city she was in. I was desperate, but now I realize with all the people in the city, it should have been a warning sign that her distance was set so high. I was still new to Tinder, and while I knew most people meet for the first time on the date, my traditional values had me offering to pick her up, and surprisingly, she accepted. I arrived to pick her up, knocked on her door, and she answered holding a cat because she was trying to herd another cat away from the door with her foot and needed her hands. She invited me in because she wanted to show me what she sold on Etsy before we left for the theater. She had made phone cases with Barbie heads sticking out and earrings with googly eyes. It was all terrible. The date went fine, and I continued to text her the next day. As I said before, I was desperate. There literally wasn't a single girl my age in my whole town. Sunday night came around, and I texted her goodnight. She replied to goodnight, and I went to sleep. I woke up to over 20 messages. She started at 2 in the morning, then sent another 5 minutes later asking why I didn't respond. A few minutes after that, she started ranting about how this always happens to her and how every guy ignores her. Then she kept asking what was wrong with her and listing possible reasons. When I finished reading it, I was flabbergasted. I texted her back explaining I had gone to bed and that it's very important to me to be well rested to teach, so I don't respond to texts after I sleep. I apologized and told her I didn't think we were going to work, and it wasn't because of anything she had listed. Next story. We were 3 friends in a group in first year of college. My friend started dating a girl, and eventually he introduced her to us. She said I made a very good first impression. A few weeks later, they broke up. She confessed to my friend that she was interested in me, but I said no, because I never date a friend's ex due to personal reasons. And I wasn't interested anyway. My route to college passed by her home, and eventually I started noticing her watching me. One day, she sent my friend a picture she had taken of me. She kept doing that. It was strange but still kind of harmless at first, seeing a silhouette staring at you when you came home late in the evening. Then things got worse when she messaged my sister saying I had used her, and that she would come to my home with her mother to confront me. My friend kept all the messages and showed them. His parents came with him to her home along with me to clear things up. After that, no more silhouettes were seen. Next story, I met a girl, Girl A, through a friend of a friend and met up with her at a college party. I really enjoyed hanging out with her that night. She was laughing at my jokes and very physically affectionate. I brought her back to my place, and we got hooked up. After that, she fell asleep and left sometime during the night. The next night, I ended up hooking up with another girl, Girl B, at a different party. Apparently, Girl A found out through mutual friends. On Monday morning, I had an 8 a.m. class. Around 7:30 a.m., I noticed a note on my car. Based on timing, it had been placed there sometime overnight or early morning. The note said I meant a lot to Girl A and that she thought we were special. I assumed it was just a reaction to the situation. I went to class, and when I came back later that day, there was another note on my car. This one was more emotional and talked about the future together. Over the next week, I kept getting notes under my windshield wiper. At first, they were about how special we were, but they gradually turned into comments about what I was missing and insults directed at Girl B. I tried talking to her friends and explaining there was no malice and that I did like her. I just didn't think it was the right time for a relationship. It didn't help. The notes kept coming. After around 15 notes on my car, and a couple left at my apartment door, I decided to confront her directly. I went with a mutual friend and tried to calmly explain the situation and let her down gently. She refused to write any of the notes and said she had no idea what I was talking about. After that, things went quietly for a couple of days. Then both Girl B and I got flat tires on the same day, each with nails in the front tire. I replaced mine and moved on. The next day, I got another flat, again from a nail in the newly replaced tire. I told Girl B, and she contacted the police. After that, I didn't really hear from Girl A again. Years later, about 10 years later, I heard through a mutual friend that she named her firstborn son after me. It was a very uncommon name, which made it even more unsettling. That's the last real update I ever got from that situation. Next story. This actually happened last night. I had a date at my place. I cooked dinner, we finished about a bottle and a half of red wine, and it was a really good evening with great conversation. It was already around 2:30 in the morning, so she stayed over since it was too late to drive. We fell asleep watching Netflix. Shortly after, I heard an awful scream and immediately sat up, but she was still asleep. I went back to sleep, and about 15 minutes later, it happened again. At first, I thought she might be messing with me, but it kept happening roughly every 15 minutes throughout the night. This continued until around 8 in the morning. When I mentioned it to her, she said it happens regularly, apparently every night. Next story. I was visiting my mom to check if she needed anything. Her neighbor came over and asked if I wanted to have dinner and some drinks with her that night. My mom said she was nice, so I agreed. When I got there, everything was fine until she had too much to drink. She tried to get me to do it with her, and when I refused, she started hitting me. I called my sister and kept the phone in my pocket so she could hear what was happening. As I tried to leave and told her she was acting crazy, she kept trying to pressure me into doing it. When I refused again, she pulled out a knife and stabbed me in the stomach. The police arrived about 5 minutes later after my sister called them. She didn't go to jail, but I ended up in the hospital getting stitches. Next story. I'm not entirely sure if this counts since it fits more into my cringe category, but I had a girlfriend in college that I dated for about a year and a half. At first, she seemed cute and normal, but over time she became manipulative, controlling, and honestly pretty unhinged. Here are some of the highlights, or lowlights. She was religious and originally told me she didn't care that I wasn't. Later, she claimed the only reason we were intimate was because she thought I would break up with her otherwise. The weird part was that she had been the one aggressively initiating everything and never once asked how I felt about it. She also started heavily pressuring me to go to church with her family. Unless she was personally friends with a girl too, all of my female friendships slowly had to disappear. She blamed her trust issues on her ex, but really, she just didn't trust me around other women. The manipulative part was how subtle she made it sound. Instead of saying, "Don't talk to her," she would say things like, "I just don't trust her," or "I think she likes you." Every woman she didn't know became some kind of potential threat in her mind. At the same time, she constantly messaged her ex and saw absolutely nothing wrong with it, even after I explained that it bothered me and felt hypocritical. As you can imagine, those conversations never went very well. The worst incident happened the day before we were supposed to fly out to meet my parents. She went out drinking with a guy friend from her childhood and a couple of other friends. She got so drunk that she stopped answering my calls and basically disappeared for the entire night. Eventually, I went looking for her and somehow managed to find her, which honestly felt impossible given how crowded everything was. None of her explanations afterward made any sense. And looking back, I'm pretty sure she had gone off to hook up with the guy. When I told her I was seriously considering flying out alone instead of spending the whole night searching for her, she accused me of being selfish and not caring about her at all. She somehow managed to blame the entire situation, including her drinking, on me. When I went away to work as an instructor for an army training event, she called me at 4 a.m. crying and claiming that her ex had essayed her. Later, after we had already broken up, one of my friends saw her at a bar. He started talking to her, and then the same ex showed up. She immediately greeted him with a huge smile and a hug. My friend looked at her and asked, "Wasn't that the guy who essayed you?" She instantly got awkward and started stumbling over herself because she realized she had been caught lying. Another time, she claimed that random people were calling her at all hours of the day, telling her I was cheating on her. But supposedly, none of them would identify themselves. Looking back, I'm pretty sure it was just her trying to bait me into confessing to something I hadn't done. At that point, I was already out of town. She eventually broke up with me about 3 months after I got stationed at a post, just south of the Korean demilitarized zone. Honestly, I felt relieved and happy that the relationship was finally over. About a week later, she tried convincing me to get back together with her and complained that I never even fought for us. I flat out refused. Then, 2 weeks after that, her mother texted me saying that her daughter was really hurt. I basically replied, "That's not my problem." Her mom accepted that answer pretty quickly, probably because she had never liked me anyway since I wasn't Christian. What made the situation especially rough was that she knew I was completely isolated at the time. Because of military rules and structure, there were only 2 people I realistically could have become friends with within that situation. One wasn't even stationed on the same installation, and the other was someone I genuinely did not want to be around. So, most of the time, it was just me by myself. For some background, I didn't grow up in a very loving environment, so back then I was way more willing to tolerate unhealthy behavior if it meant someone supposedly loved or cared about me. Thankfully, things eventually got much better. I'm now happily married to an amazing woman, so no worries there. Also, therapy really does help. Next story, met a girl when I was a senior in college, and she was a junior. We hung out a couple of times through mutual friends. I wouldn't say we really hit it off, but she was fun to be around when we were drinking. That led to us making out once while drunk, and it wasn't pleasant. I can't even fully remember what was wrong, but I remember finding it uncomfortable. She had also mentioned before that she was a virgin, and between that and how the makeout went, I didn't want things to go further or take on that kind of responsibility, so I started distancing myself. I told her I wasn't interested. The day of a mutual friend's get-together came around, and she called me. I wasn't avoiding her calls, so I picked up. She was being very pushy about whether I would be at the party that night. I decided I'd rather just stay in and play the new Medal of Honor game with a friend, so I told her I wouldn't be there. She didn't like that answer and kept pressing me on why I wouldn't go. I ended up telling her I wasn't feeling well and thought I was coming down with the flu, since I didn't want to hurt her feelings by being blunt. I eventually got her calm enough to end the call and went back to my evening playing video games. Later that night, my friend and I decided to walk to the local corner store for snacks. As we left the front door, there was a Tupperware container full of soup on my doorstep. Okay, that's sweet, you might think, but I never told this girl where I lived. And she clearly knew it was a bit creepy to leave something like that without telling me or knocking. That felt like it was crossing a line for me. So I called her to thank her for the soup, but also told her I wasn't interested in anything romantic. She did not take that well and accused me of misinterpreting a friendly gesture, so I ended up ghosting her. She called every day for a week or 2 after that, and while I never actually saw her show up at my house, I wouldn't be surprised if she did. About 2 months later, she called me at 1 a.m. I answered, knowing she was drunk. She was in tears and said her friends had left her at a bar. That whole group was known for drama, so it wasn't shocking. I was having a quiet poker night, so I agreed to pick her up and take her home. When I got there, she wasn't satisfied with going home and started screaming that I didn't love her. She then accused me of trying to take advantage of her and said she would call the police if I didn't stop the car. I tried to get her out of a rougher area of town, but she was hysterical, so I eventually relented and dropped her off in a bank parking lot, thinking the security cameras would at least keep her safe while she called a cab. Against my better judgment, I called her later that night to make sure she got home safely. She had. That was the last I ever heard from her. Next story, I was sent to a juvenile justice center for schooling because of drug problems. While I was there, I met this girl. Let's call her Bree. She seemed cool at first, but once I noticed she was getting a little flirty with me, I backed off because I had a girlfriend at the time. One day, one of the teachers pulled me aside and explained that Bree had serious separation and attachment issues. Apparently, she was there because she had attacked her boyfriend with a knife and a hot hair curler. I was instructed not to talk to her and to actually make myself less appealing to her, for my own protection. I also couldn't mention my girlfriend around her because she would completely lose it. The worst part was that this was all happening inside the Juvenile Justice Center. I was legally required to be there while also being genuinely scared of her. Next story. I was dating this goth girl who struggled with depression. One day, I tried calling her, but her phone kept giving me a busy signal. This was back in the mid-90s, before everyone had cell phones. I got in my car and drove to her apartment. I had a key, so I let myself in. She was sitting in the middle of the floor holding a huge kitchen knife. She had sliced open the couch, recliner, and mattress and pulled all the stuffing out of them. She just sat there in the middle of all the stuffing, holding the knife with a creepy smile on her face. I quietly left my key on the table near the door and walked out. I never saw her again. Next story. We had a friend who I believe has since been medicated, who developed a serious crush on another friend of ours. The other guy mostly spent his days drinking and watching soccer. He wasn't really interested in her romantically, but she kept pushing for a relationship. Eventually, he sat her down and explained that he wanted to stay friends, but didn't want anything more than that. For some reason, she later told us that she got so frustrated by the rejection that she went to a grocery store, bought a whole fish, broke into his apartment, and placed the fish in his toilet as revenge. The funniest part was that he never mentioned it to anyone afterward. Not even a simple, "How did a fish end up in my toilet?" Next story. Well, my story ended with someone being asked to resign. I was working as a cook at a very popular restaurant when a woman had her friend hand a Jigglypuff Pokemon card to her server. The server then passed it to my assistant kitchen manager, who finally passed it to me. Written on the card was her phone number along with the description, "The fat girl with glasses and a septum piercing." I wasn't interested. I'll give her credit for having confidence, but I'm a very thin guy, and I have my own preferences when it comes to dating. I mentioned my assistant kitchen manager because she kept pressuring me to call this stranger. I repeatedly said no. Then my kitchen manager got offended and said, "So what? I'm fat with glasses and a septum piercing?" I still refused and said I wasn't interested. She got angry that I wouldn't change my mind and started changing my work schedule so I couldn't work with my friends anymore. Eventually, she was asked to resign because of discrimination against me. The main point of the story is that this woman passed the card through several different people just to get it to me. The restaurant was also very LGBTQ friendly, and my kitchen manager seemed offended that I turned her down. Apparently, in her eyes, a man should just accept any attention from a woman. But that's not how attraction works. The woman took her shot, which is fine, but getting angry because I wasn't interested completely missed the point of respecting people's choices. Next story, I dated a girl for a while in my early 20s. She was my first regular intimate partner. It turned out she had an extremely high drive, and since I was young and inexperienced, I pushed myself way too hard because I didn't want to disappoint her. I ended up becoming severely exhausted, got mono, and spent a week in the hospital. After that, I broke up with her. Whenever she got drunk at parties, she would tell people about how amazing it was with me, and how she would never find anyone else who could do the same way with her. Honestly, it was embarrassing more than flattering. After the breakup, she stalked me for about a year. She would suddenly appear when I left work, when I turned down an aisle at the grocery store, while I was eating at local restaurants, and even when I was entering or leaving my apartment building. She also left me notes and phone messages constantly. Eventually, she finally gave up. But it took about a year before she stopped trying to get back together with me. Next story, I was a creepy girl. As a freshman in high school, I thought I had a crush on this guy, but looking back now, I realize I was only interested in his looks. Real crushes just aren't really a thing for me. One day, I worked up the courage to ask him his name, but I got too nervous to introduce myself and just walked away afterward. Later, I talked to him again and finally told him my name and that I wanted to get to know him better. He acted nice about it, but he was obviously uncomfortable and got out of the situation as quickly as possible. After that, I never tried contacting him again because my social skills were basically non-existent. Emil, if you're reading this, I'm really sorry, dude. Next story. I was 19 at the time and a lot more talkative and actively looking for a girlfriend. Honestly, I was kind of a player until this happened. I started talking to a girl on Facebook who seemed pretty normal. She claimed she was 19, had a car, and had a job. She also said her car was in the shop, which didn't seem unusual to me at the time. Eventually, she ended up staying the night at my place. I had recently lost my minimum wage job, so I had plenty of free time and didn't mind the company. She kept asking if I wanted her to stay another day, and when I asked about her job, she said she swapped shifts with her friend all the time. Again, I didn't think much of it back then. One thing I did notice was that she was terrified of horror movies. I thought it was a little strange, but I brushed it off as just being one of her quirks. She stayed for a few days, and then randomly, at around 4 in the morning, she told me her friend was coming to pick her up. It caught me completely off guard because there had been no discussion about her leaving before that moment. Then everything went downhill. Later, while strolling through Facebook, I saw a missing person report for her. She was 15. I immediately panicked and started connecting all the dots. I blocked her on everything right away. Sometime later, I ran into my uncle at a bar. He started telling me about a woman he knew who had "or" tattooed on her arm and mentioned that she had a daughter. It was the same girl. I barely held myself together while he talked. I started breathing heavily but didn't say anything. I just acted interested in the story. Then he casually mentioned that the girl had apparently been sleeping with men older than me. After all of that, I developed severe guilt, trust issues, and a lot of self-hatred. I also became a heavy alcoholic for a long time. I stopped using the internet to meet women entirely. Reddit is basically the only social media I still use. I've stayed single ever since and haven't dated anyone in years because that experience made me realize how easily someone can completely fabricate an entire life. Next story. I used to have a crush on a girl. I knew she was into weird stuff, but one day I went to her house and she offered me some orange juice. She took an unusually long time preparing it. And when she came back, I noticed the color was too orange and it had a metallic taste. Later, I went to the bathroom, and after drying my hands with paper towels and lifting the trash bin to throw it away, my suspicions were confirmed. After leaving the bathroom, I made up an excuse that a family member had been in an accident and that I needed to leave immediately. Next story. I dated this girl for a couple of months. The whole time I knew she was cheating on me, but I wasn't serious about the relationship. So I honestly didn't care that much. One day, her phone was sitting on the table between us when she got a text message. We both looked down, and it was very obviously a flirty text from some guy. She grabbed the phone as quickly as possible. I asked, "Oh, so you're cheating on me?" She immediately got defensive and claimed it was one of her clients because she worked helping mentally challenged people. She had his full first and last name saved in her contacts. The next day, I looked him up on the dating app where we had originally met, and there he was. He clearly wasn't mentally challenged. I didn't message him, but the app showed users who viewed your profile. Shortly afterward, he blocked me. That honestly made me wonder what she had told him about me, because there was absolutely no reason for him to block me otherwise. About a month later, I texted her asking, "Are you still coming over tonight?" She said she couldn't, but refused to explain why. After a while, she finally admitted, "I got engaged last night." So, I replied, "Oh, so you really were cheating on me the whole time." She still insisted she had never cheated and claimed the guy had just been her best friend until then and that they supposedly weren't dating before the engagement. Either way, it was pretty messed up, so I stopped replying to her completely. It's been about 7 years since then. She's had around 4 fiancés back to back, but still hasn't gotten married. Next story, in my first year of university, there was a girl I don't even know how I met, but she somehow knew me. She always knew my classes, projects, deadlines, and everything, and would keep informing me about upcoming work. I thought she was just a really helpful person who was nice to everyone, and I appreciated it. So I didn't want her to stop. Since we never really talked outside of her giving me updates, I eventually asked her to grab coffee sometime. The next day, she was waiting for me at the end of my class. I'm pretty sure I said sometime, not tomorrow, and I already had plans with my friends. I said hi, told her I was going with my friends, and walked off. She then said, "Aren't you going to wait for me?" with a very serious expression. I told her I was heading out, and that she should call me next time before making plans. About 15 minutes later, she called and asked if we could still get coffee. I was doing a street photo shoot with a friend, so I told her that, and said she could come by if she wanted. I even sent her my live location. A few hours later, she still wasn't there, and I was heading back for another class. That's when I realized she had been following me the whole time. She came up to talk once she noticed I'd seen her. Luckily, I ran into a close female friend at that moment, and she came over to say hi, hugged me, and kissed my cheek. I think the girl thought she was my girlfriend because she slowly walked away after that. I felt pretty uneasy after that and never spoke to her again. I ghosted her for about a week, and then COVID made it even easier to fully cut contact. Next story. I'm not a man, but I witnessed a creepy girl situation in high school. There was a guy who was kind of interested in me and suggested we should tell people we were dating to make his ex-girlfriend jealous. I agreed, mostly because I wasn't used to getting attention from boys. It did make her jealous. So much that she told the entire school she had terminal cancer and was expected to die by Christmas. This was around September. For the next few weeks, she acted very emotionally and dramatic about it. Someone later asked if she was going to do chemotherapy, and she just stared blankly and said, "What?" Over time, she kept changing the story, saying the cancer had moved from her stomach to her heart to her brain. Christmas came and went, and she was still fine, just continuing her normal life and pushing the supposed death date further and further out. Eventually, the guy ended up getting back together with her, and I decided to switch to a friend group. Next story. I was out with friends at a gay bar when a group of women on a night out slowly tried to join our booth. I went to get drinks and came back to one of them sitting in my seat on my jacket. I told her we didn't mind sharing the table, but I still wanted my seat back. She said, "Don't worry, you can sit on my lap." I politely declined. For the next few hours, she followed me around the bar and kept saying, "I can't believe you are gay." We eventually left for another club, and I ended up making out with a guy. She came over, slapped me, and told him I had been hitting on her all night. The guy, who was actually my boyfriend at the time, just laughed and we kept dancing. About 10 minutes later, a bouncer came to talk to me because she had claimed I slapped her and told her to leave her alone. Luckily, people backed up my story and nothing came of it. At around 3 in the morning, we were leaving and I saw her outside crying and shouting, "He was the one." I'm still not sure who she meant. Next story did research stint one summer. There was a nerdy, quiet, unassuming girl who dressed like she lived in the movie Napoleon Dynamite. She was really nice and polite, but didn't seem to want to make any friends. One day, I was going for a walk and saw her sitting outside. I asked if she wanted to come with me. For about 30 minutes, we had the usual banter. But out of nowhere, she talked about how her university would make a bonfire at the end of every school year. One year, she decided to help by making napalm. She said it was the biggest fire they'd ever had. She just casually mentioned making napalm without any prompting or segue. I asked how she knew how to make napalm. She said most explosives and poisons are pretty easy to make and not very dangerous if you follow the correct procedures. I didn't really hang out with her anymore after that. Next story, I'm not a man, but I really want to share this story. This actually happened recently, about 3 months ago. I was home alone since I didn't feel, well, I was on my bed relaxing with my puppy, and my cat was on my desk staring at the window. I was probably drawing or animating on my phone. I don't exactly remember. Then I heard a knock on the door. My mom had just left the house to go grocery shopping, so I figured she forgot something and got up to open the door. I stopped when I reached it and thought, why would my mom knock? She has the keys. My puppy had followed me and seemed less enthusiastic than usual, and nervous. My cat, who doesn't like people, was acting alert and scared. I stood on my toes to look through the peephole. I'm 13 and pretty short. I saw my neighbor from across the hall standing there. I opened the door, just barely. She gave a really strange smile, and we said our hellos. She asked if I was alone, and I said no, that my dad was in the other room, which was a lie. I knew this woman well, and she had never seemed strange until then. She sighed and said, I saw your mother leave, so when she gets back, please tell her to call me. Then she left and I closed the door. I didn't know what she wanted with my mom, but I didn't tell her. She moved out 1 month after this happened. Next story. So I have a friend we will call Jill. Jill had a crush on me, but I wasn't interested, so we became friends. I joined the military and moved away. A few years went by. One night while TDY in Korea, my phone started blowing up with notifications of her tagging me in photos on Facebook. She only had one photo of me that I knew of, so I had to look. She had recently graduated and decided to have a graduation party. Since I wasn't there, she stuffed clothes to make a dummy and printed a life-size picture of my face to tape it. She carried it around and took pictures of the entire party. She even gave it a place at the dinner table, and it was included in family photos. If we had been close, I think it wouldn't have bothered me as much. But it was just kind of out of the blue. Next story, about 10 years ago, I moved from British Columbia to Alberta and was living with my girlfriend in Canmore. Her roommates didn't want more people in the house, so I got my own place. The woman who owned the house seemed nice and the rent was cheap, so I took it. The first night I lived there, I was working at McDonald's and had a night shift. I got home around 10:30 at night. When I arrived, there was a cross hanging on the door, and the landlady was sitting inside staring at the wall. She was wearing a long black, cheap-looking shiny dress with a black vest over it. She had long, unbrushed black hair, and the kitchen was a mess. The only thing missing to make her look like a witch was a pointy hat. I was scared to fall asleep. I only lived there for 1 month. Next story. This one comes from when I was at Job Corps. I enrolled in Job Corps about 4 years ago. I was very desperate at the time to gain skills to get a job. Some people there were more desperate than I was. But the whole idea is that it is a program from the Department of Labor designed to help teenagers get jobs by learning a trade. Some people, like me, went there for free training, while others were straight up homeless beforehand and had nowhere else to turn. My ex was one of those people. She was someone I thought fitted my standards, which weren't high, during a time when I felt I had little self-worth. Things were slow at first, and I got to know her more over time since we both worked in similar trades, accounting for a while. According to her, she could not only read palms to determine the future, but she could also read minds. She also claimed to practice black magic and said she had sold her soul for her abilities, which was one of the more unusual things. By that point, many people would have seen obvious red flags, but I didn't notice them until 2 moments. She said that no matter what, in 2 years, she wanted a child. She had polycystic ovary syndrome, which she said would eventually limit her ability to have children. I understood that, but I hesitated because I wasn't ready and didn't feel like I had my life together. The second moment was when we went into a closed art room and we did it there. She did not want me to use protection. I stopped and told her I wasn't sure about continuing. In the following months, she called me not a true man, until I eventually got fed up and ended things. Before I left, she said she cast a hex on me for my atrocities, saying I would have bad luck for the rest of my life and that I was like all the rest who had broken up with her. I haven't heard from her since, and it did wonders for my mental health. I eventually met someone who values me as a person and my interests. I'm leaving out a lot of the positive parts, but it still isn't easy to think about. It's not the only story like this I know. Another friend of mine met someone similar at Job Corps as well. It seems more common there. Next story. For the last 2 years, right up until today, there is one girl who has been following my Instagram and messaging me from time to time. I reply out of politeness. My Instagram is a business account, not a private account, and I am trying to do something serious with my love for travel. Every 2 to 3 days, she starts a conversation asking which city, state, or exact address I am at. I usually just mention the country and leave it there. I do not want to block her because she also watches my YouTube videos. And I do not want to come off as snobbish or rude to my followers and subscribers. But I still do not understand the constant need to narrow down my exact location for the past 2 years or so. Next story. I was riding my bike home from work one day when I found a girl sitting on a bridge, crying. Everyone else was ignoring her, so I stopped to ask what was wrong. She said she was thinking about jumping. I talked her into taking the bus back to her neighborhood with me instead. I also gave her my phone number in case she ever needed help. For the next 3 weeks, she kept trying to flirt with me and invite me to her house over text, even though I told her I had a girlfriend. She even bumped into me once on the bus and tried to get me to go home with her again. I eventually had to block her. She was probably around 16 to 18 years old. Next story. My ex and I dated for about 1.5 years. It became clear over time that she was not going to stop drinking or seeking help. It wasn't casual drinking. Multiple times a month, I would have to clean her up in the shower because she was too intoxicated. I broke up with her. She reacted by getting extremely drunk, taking painkillers, breaking into my room and lockbox, and taking my gun. She later discharged it in a public area and ended up passing out in her car in a dangerous state. I was out of town at the time, and the police contacted me to retrieve my firearm and asked whether I wanted to press charges. She was placed on a psychiatric hold and released the following week. Over the next 1.5 years, she repeatedly tried to reconnect in inappropriate ways, including pressuring me and attempting to contact me despite boundaries. Eventually, I moved states and changed my number. Next story, I was at a party one night in high school, probably a junior or senior year. There were some clearly younger girls there, around 13 or 14. As I went to get a refill, I accidentally bumped into one of them. I said, "Sorry, sweetheart," and moved on. 2 weeks later, I was called into the school counselor's office. I had never been there before, so I was confused. The counselor asked me if I knew a girl who was depressed because I wouldn't talk to her. I was completely shocked because I was single and had no idea what they were referring to. It turned out the girl from the party had imagined a relationship between us. Based on that brief interaction, lived the whole scenario in her head. Next story, I was 19 and working for the city, picking up trash and emptying bins in a park. The person I worked with was a 23-year-old woman who was physically much larger than me. She would often make inappropriate and suggestive jokes and comments about me while I was working. On another occasion, I worked with 2 other women, and the behavior continued in a similar way. I didn't really know how to respond at the time, and mostly brushed it off, even though it made me uncomfortable. Looking back now, I recognize it as inappropriate behavior, and it has shaped how I think about workplace boundaries and harassment in general. Next story. Not my story, but my husband's. We had both moved to the area within about a month of each other, but we hadn't met yet. My aunt was known for being very flirtatious and often spent time at bars. My husband used to go to the bar near his place on weekends. After drinkings, one night he met my aunt outside while smoking. They talked and things escalated. He was quite intoxicated, and she asked him to sit in her car while she ran errands for alcohol and cigarettes. Eventually, she took him back to her mother's house. He ended up passing out there and later left in the early morning hours after waking up and sobering up. I only found out about this about 2 weeks into our relationship, when I asked a similar question. It became clear later that she was my aunt when we ran into her together at a bar about a month later. When it came up, she initially denied it, but my mother later confirmed she knew exactly what had happened. I still get to tease him about it sometimes. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.